Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our September 17th council meeting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mr. Oja?
Here.
Mr. Meneghini?
Here.
Dr. Hayes?
Here.
Mr. Gottstein?
Here.
Mr. Babalani?
Here.
This evening, ladies and gentlemen, we will be entering into a committee meeting of the whole to discuss two proposed ordinances before we start our regular meeting. The first ordinance is it's the Complete Streets Ordinance, an ordinance to provide for and regulate design principle to promote a safe network of access for pedestrians, bicycles, and motorists in the city of Norway. The second one is Ordinance 403, which is urban forestry. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we've talked in previous council meetings, there's desire from the council to move forward with these two ordinances. The first is Ordinance 402, which is, we call it Complete Streets Ordinance. We had a Complete Streets training in April of this year. Following that meeting, we passed a resolution in support of the Complete Streets concept. And basically the Complete Streets concept is that through our master plan effort and through our capital improvement effort plans, that we would evaluate all of our projects with a non-motorized plan in mind. I put together the ordinance based on samples that received from other communities. There are a number of other UP communities that have put in ordinances in place already. A couple of principles that I was looking for to put in front of council was that we would handle the details of the non-motorized plan through the master plan effort, and it identifies that in section 1, dealing with, talks a lot about the master plan and about the capital improvements plan, which the council would review on an annual basis. Master plan is done on a 5-year basis. In fact, Planning Commission is going to start a new review of the planning of the master plan this year. So the second portion of that is a set of exceptions where this council or future councils can look at specific projects and make an exception. Numerous exceptions could be monetary, it could be a disproportionate need for probable use. You look at your local streets, you know, where it makes sense. So it really doesn't bind this council or future councils. It's not an ordinance that's going to mandate bike lanes or mandate trails. What it does is it does add a part of internal controls or design principles that you at least have to look at, which we should do anyway, but it canonizes that and says we're going to look at all those options. So I think that it has enough exit ramps in the ordinance that if, like I say, this council or future councils want to continue as status quo on our street project, you can. If you, again, it will ask the Planning Commission, though, to come up with a decent non-motorized transportation plan for the community. So I can answer any questions on Complete Streets at this time, if you have any. Again, this is a first reading, so if you would like, we could put this towards public hearing, or we could go through a second reading in a similar format and then go to public hearing. It's up to the council on how you'd like to handle that.
Generally, I was for this. I had the concerns of basically, to put it, binding the hands of future councils. I think the exceptions that are in there are loose enough that it would allow the council to make the best decision and not, for the time, not be bound by this. The only other concern I have with this is to prove most of these, you will have to engineer it. And so even on small projects, you're adding engineering costs. And that would increase the engineering cost of large projects to go through this. That's my only other concern with this right now.
Do you agree with that? I don't think you have to go through full engineering. You can go through an initial analysis phase that would, you wouldn't go through a full design phase, which is your major engineering cost. We would go through an initial evaluation regardless. So I'm not sure that I understand your concern, but I don't think you get to that point of design before you would actually make those decisions.
I think we're pretty much doing that already, weren't you? With existing projects, looking at pedestrian traffic and things like that.
Yeah, one of the areas we struggled with, and it's strictly a financial issue at this point, is when we've gone through and redesigned our streets, or actually had a street project, we have been limited mainly, again, financially from curb to curb. And ultimately, you'd like to go sidewalk to sidewalk or right-of-way to right-of-way. So when you go down through a project, you'd also try and pick up your sidewalks and pick up some of your boulevard work. But, that's an off-ramp here as well, from a financial standpoint. So typically right now, though, we are doing that kind of evaluation curb to curb. And parking is a major concern, depending on the type of street, whether it's a major or a local street. We want to take into account the current use, the current parking configurations, and how people use the street and their properties.
And having this ordinance in place and eventually working this into the master plan potentially opens us up for additional grant through the state.
I believe that's where they're going. I've seen that last 10 years, that when they come out with programs, what they try to do is separate communities when you put in applications. We've seen that with the blueprints and cool cities and other types of designations. At some point it gets saturated and they come up with a new program, to kind of respin that wheel. So I think it's still on the front end right now, and it is state law, and it's handed down by the feds through the state, and it's state law about the complete street. So I want to say that from what I've seen in the past, that's typically what happens.
Does the state highways, I know, like on US 2 heading east out of town, I mean, are they going by these things too? Because there's not a lot of drops for wheelchairs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, they...
That they're supposed to be regulated under the same rules as we are for state law. I'm not sure if they're completely going through that, but they're supposed to.
Okay. Because I'm with Jeremy. I think that it's going to add some cost, but if the costs are minimal and we can get extra grant money, I think it's probably a good thing, but as long as the costs are minimal, because we don't have any money to spend.
I think the wording covers that pretty good in there as far as additional costs go, and make it feasible.
Okay. Any other comment? Anybody from the public wish to comment? There will be a public hearing on this next meeting, so we can go through the formal hearing then. Okay, next would be ordinance 403, the urban forestry. Mr. Anderson.
Again, this is another of the ordinances that council has asked me to put together. This one is being driven by our urban forestry program that we started in 2007. We have a desire to apply for the Tree City USA designation, and again, that will help with other future grant opportunities. In order to comply with that, you need to have a tree ordinance. And so again, I researched what other communities have put together, and I did try to stay with UP communities. And I kind of mixed and matched a couple different ordinances that I thought were, I liked some parts of some ordinances and some parts of others, and so what I tried to do is, again, make the details into our forestry plan, which the Parks and Recreation Committee has managed. We're required to have a tree board, but again, I put in here that the Parks and Rec Committee would be the tree board, and again, they're already monitoring our program, so I think it's a nice fit. And again, I think that, you know, there are some things that are spelled out, which help monitor the activities in the boulevards, for planting trees, to make sure that if a resident wants to plant their own tree in the boulevard, that they have to contact the city so that we have certain types of trees, mainly because of the height issues with clear distances and so forth. So I don't know if you have any specific questions. There's a lot of references to pruning and to management, mostly by the city. We're going to try and push out more information for the public so that they can take advantage of of the information that we gather and put together for their own use as well on their private property. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
When does the rec committee meet next?
That will be meeting this Wednesday. They meet on the third Wednesdays of
We're
every
going to
month.
have them review this then, to make any recommendations?
They can review this at this time.
Because if they're going to be the tree board, they ought
Yeah.
to have some crack at wording beforehand, before we adopt it.
I have one comment here, Ray. Page 2, permits required. No person shall plant, prune, remove, or otherwise disturb any tree on any street or city property without first filing an application procuring a permit from the city manager. I mean, do you need a permit, or just hopefully that doesn't cost them $5 because they want to go and prune a tree?
No, I think what
Plant
we
a
want to
tree?
do, though, is we
Just
want
written
to,
permission before
yeah,
they go
get
and
permission
cut
to...
something down or plant
Exactly.
something? Okay.
We're not looking to make this like a zoning permit where we, you know, our zoning permits are like $20 a piece. We're not really looking at that. It's kind of like what we did with the rental code, where we really want you to contact us and say, hey, there's an issue with this tree, or I want to do this with this tree, and it's on city property, so we want you to contact us.
Well, the way I took this, filing an application, procuring a permit, I thought there might be a charge involved there, and there definitely should not be.
Should that be in the permit, do you think?
Or just a written permission. Yeah, it wouldn't hurt to put it in there, no charge.
Well, a written, you know, it's easy to use a simple permit form for written permission. I think that's probably easier and it's consistent with, from a policy standpoint.
Is there any other comments from the council, questions? Anybody from the public? Okay. With
It
that,
might be worthwhile distributing this to the recreation committee before the Wednesday meeting, even if possible.
If it's possible, we can get it out to them.
If there's nothing else, then we will go into our regular meeting. We need approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of September 4th, 2012. Any additions or corrections?
Didn't Trish Plant lead us in the pledge to the flag last meeting? That's the only correction I would have.
If, I'm looking for a motion to approve.
I make a motion, we approve the regular meeting September 4th, 2012 with the recommendation that Doc had.
Support?
Motion made by Mark, supported by Dr. Hayes. Roll call.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Mr. Babalani?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes. Approval manifest 2012-18 in the amount of $456,904.24. Of this, $177,000 was purchased power with the low water we've had in the river. Questions, Mark?
I have a few here, Jeremy. On page 1, under the first portion there, the music tree, what did we do here in City Hall? Is that the new, something with the TV channel, or $762, new audio?
No, what we did was we addressed some council concerns and audience concerns about the sound. And so what we did was we put in that speaker behind you there on the floor.
Oh, okay.
The portable, and then we also have a headset from that public meeting we had when you had someone out talking. We got a wireless headset.
I think that's a good idea. Page 2, down under the Public Works Department, Schultz Equipment, remove and replace the rear transmission seal on, must be one of the trucks, $1,940. Is
Yeah,
there some
that's
reason
one
why
of-
that wasn't done in,
We don't have the equipment to remove that in our shop. It's one of the big dump trucks, and Rick doesn't have the amount of equipment that he could do that, so we farmed it out to do that.
wow, must be a big job. Page 4, results broadcasting, down under the downtown development. The radio show cost us $1,000. Is that that's not per month. I've never
No,
seen that on
that's
there
per-
before.
That's per year. It's actually 2,000 per year. And the DDA picks up half of that, and then the WPPI picks up the other half for economic development.
Okay, it's 2,000 per year?
Yep, and that's, they do it on a 6-month basis. So that's that hour per month, every month.
Okay.
Yep.
I've never seen that on there before.
Yeah, that was on there last year.
This one's probably for, this one would be for you again, Ray. Page 5, under the fire department, the water bottling. I see we get water bottling for the electric department for down at the hydro from our bottling here in town, and this one comes from Binks. Is there a reason? Is it?
I don't know why they get it for Binks. They have to have the water when they go out on the
Oh, I
runs,
understand
yeah.
that, but I was just curious why it didn't
I
come from here.
don't know why they choose to go to Binks.
Okay. Joel, under the electric on page 6, Mead and Hunt, engineering 556, and then there's Krause for 550. Site review for
Yeah.
Krause.
Yep. We had the loop system, we're talking about putting in sectionalizing reclosers and finishing that project. There was a conference call that we all had to partake in. And then I had some fusing issues that I had on the system, and I had to call Dave to run some calculations in the electrical program to get the proper fusing sizes. So that's the cost for that. And the Mead and Hunt is the FERC license compliance
Okay.
stuff that we need to do for our FERC license.
Didn't we pay that last month?
As things come and go, you'll see it throughout the year, here and there. Sometimes it's every month, you'll see a small charge for it. We come to the council in the beginning of the year or towards the end of the year, whichever kind of works out, and we get an approval for the following year, fiscal year. In fact, I'm working on that right now, asking them to put together the contract for this next fiscal year, looking at what types of things need to be done throughout the year.
Okay. And then on the golf side, Ray, on page 7, there's a porta potty. Is that actually on the course, or is that for something else up there, or is there construction, or what is that?
I believe there's one out on the course.
There is? Okay. That's all I have.
Okay, Chris?
Page 1, under the ordinance 399, posting the Norway News was $313. And I see the ordinance for posting 401 was only $39.
Based on the size of the posting, it must have been a much larger volume of the posting.
The ordinance was a lot larger.
Was that full
Yeah.
page one that, or?
Yeah.
And then sometimes they're really small. Depends how big the ordinance is.
Yeah, 400 was just a paragraph. It was pretty small.
This is part of that big one that was in there?
Yeah.
Okay. And then on page 4, under, there's 2 of them, traffic service maintenance, the MTC grade crossing for 4560, and then also down a little bit further, the same thing for 4560.
We received notice about a week or so ago from Canadian National that in 1994, the state of Michigan passed a law that said that the rail companies can charge the local road jurisdiction for maintenance of railroad crossings on an annual basis. They have different rates for certain types of crossings. We have two in our jurisdiction. We have the crossing down on Lake Road, and we have the crossing over by Belgian Town Road. The crossing at the highway is handled by MDOT. They had never billed us before, so we received a letter from them saying that they recognized they hadn't billed us, but they could have since 1994, so they were only going to go back to 2007. So what you see are 5 years of charges on two crossings, and one is a major street, and one's a local street, so we split them accordingly.
So we're gonna see this charge then every
Not,
year
not,
going
not
forward?
that amount, it's like $760 per crossing per year.
Okay, so we'll budget for that then?
Yes.
Next year, okay.
Yes.
That's all I have.
Okay, Dr. Hayes?
Does that mean that we get no benefit from a railroad going through our city? In fact, it costs us money?
That's correct.
Doesn't that seem unfair?
Well, it does to me, but that's, you know, it's based on federal law. You know, the railroad companies I mentioned in the last meeting are,
Right, I
they're
recall that.
antitrust, and so, I mean, they have quite a leeway going through communities. And they own the right-of-way, so they own the property that they're on, you know.
I think we should object to that somehow. We should be paying for a railroad crossing. We get no benefit from the railroad track. We get no taxes. Yet it costs us money to disturb our sleep at night.
I can contact somebody, but you know, this law was put in place in '94, so it's.
Well,
I don't
we
know
didn't know
about-
about it till now because
Right.
we haven't got it built until now.
I can make some phone calls.
Well, I think if they pay taxes, that would be one thing, but they don't pay any taxes. We get no benefit, we get negative, and now we gotta pay for that negativity? That doesn't sound right. That sounds like it's taxation without representation.
I agree that I agree, it doesn't sound right, but, you know, it's hard to fight the railroad.
Well, I'll just be a little devil's advocate here for a second. I think what they're gonna come back and say is that it's our traffic that's impacting their railroad. And that crossing is to protect our traffic from their trains. So the benefit is we're protecting our traffic, our people, from their trains going through. That's just a guess. Because if our road wasn't there, then they wouldn't need the crossing.
Well, they can move their train out of our town then. I think they ought to be paying us, myself, instead of the other way around. We don't have any terminals in town, and so the city itself gets absolutely no benefit from that railroad track.
I probably can guarantee that if I took a survey across communities across the state, maybe across the country, that we're not alone in that feeling. So,
Any other questions?
Somebody should do something about it. No, no other questions.
Lee?
Yeah, one comment and one question, I guess. Rural, on the final page of payroll and related expenses, Mary, this is probably, you can answer this one. On the fire truck, we paid $12,500 principal and $3,500 basically interest. When will that fire truck be paid off?
I believe that was a 15-year, right, Ray?
yeah,
I
believe
believe we
so.
are 6 years in,
6 years. Yeah.
another 9.
Okay. And then under RCS Communications, renew 12-month data plan for the 5 GPS units, $1,000. How's that working out, Joe?
The GPS units do a real good job of tracking. In fact, I get alerts. I've had 2 so far. It's kind of
Well,
humorous. It tells me when the
I wonder, seeing as last meeting, we had a gentleman addressing the council on our alleged cruising. Maybe we can put a GPS on the alleged cruisers?
the alleged cruiser has a GPS on it.
Okay,
And
that's all I have.
I have no questions. With that, I'm looking for a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion, we approve manifest 2012-18 in the amount of $456,904.24.
Support.
Motion made by Chris, supported by Mark. Roll call.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes, except I'd like to hold payment to the railroad company until it's further clarified.
Is there any support for that? It doesn't look like there's support for that. Proceed as is, I guess?
All
Do you
right.
wish to change your vote? Do you wish to change your vote, because there's no support to withhold payment?
Well, I'll vote no.
Okay, Dr. Hayes,
No.
Mr. Gottstein,
Yes.
Mr. Babalani,
Yes.
Mr. Oja,
Yes.
Mr. Menigini.
Yes.
Okay, does anyone from the audience wish to address the council on the minutes or the manifest? If do, please come up to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
Dennis Peterson, 213 13th Avenue. They haven't painted that crossing over in Belgium town in over 15 years, because I go through it every day. You might have to write them a letter and ask them to mark that crossing if we've got to pay for it.
That's something we can do. I believe, if I remember, that's based on, the amount we're charged is based on the road and the fact that it's a lighted crossing, and so I believe that's how the charges, but we can do that. Anybody else? Okay. Tonight we have two appointments and presentations. The first one is the Property Maintenance Board of Appeals. Mr. Anderson.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. In 2006, the city of Norway moved forward with the property maintenance code, a new property maintenance code, and as part of that International Property Maintenance Code, provision states that we have a Property Maintenance Board of Appeals to handle cases where people disagree with rulings of the city. And at that time, council moved to have the Zoning Board of Appeals be the Property Maintenance Board of Appeals. And when we switched over to the Norway Area Planning Board and the Norway Area Zoning Board of Appeals, we need to now update our approval for who's going to sit on the Maintenance Board of Appeals. So my recommendation is that we have the city members of the Zoning Board of Appeals sit as the Property Maintenance Board of Appeals. There's a requirement for the Property Maintenance Board of Appeals is that you have 3 members. Typically under the old zoning board, we had 5 members. So you have the minimum number, the minimum number of members and 3 at any given time on the ZBA. So it still would work nicely. We've contacted the members of the ZBA and they have agreed to sit on this board. We also, since we are actually missing an alternate on this board at this time, we contacted Mr. Joe Laurie, and he agreed that he would also sit on this board. So our next step is maybe he would also be the alternate on ZBA, but I'll talk to him later on that. But we appreciate Mr. Laurie. He sits with the assessment board and his work with the city, so I think he'll be a good member as well.
How are we going to handle this when the city has 4 members on the ZBA?
Well, the city, the 4th member would be an alternate, so what we'd have to do is we'd have to come back. You can have an alternate on the Board of Appeals as well. Okay. So you could probably do the 3 members and then have the alternate as an alternate. And then when we have only 3 members or 2 members and an alternate, you could use the alternate as a regular member.
Okay. And when you talk to Mr. Laurie, does he understand if he does not want to be the ZBA alternate, we get somebody that they would be the one, they would be replacing him on there?
Yeah, I can have a conversation with him on that, and we could also have an alternate on the Property Maintenance Board of Appeals too, so
Okay.
I think there's room. We definitely need room for people to serve, so.
Right. And I'd like to thank Mr. Laurie for being able to serve along with Mark and George Servia also on this Property Maintenance Board. Looking for a motion.
I make a motion, we approve myself, George Servia, and Joe Laurie to the Maintenance Property Appeals Board. The terms coincide with their terms on the ZBA.
Support.
Motion made by Mark, supported by Dr. Hayes. Roll call.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Mr. Babalani?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Okay, next thing we have in the appointments and presentations is the MML designation of a voting delegate for the annual meeting. Mr. Anderson.
This is an annual appointment that the city makes, somebody going to the Michigan Municipal League annual business meeting. And I've gone to the meetings before and carried the city's flag at the meeting for being a voting delegate. Of course, any council member that would like to do this would be more than happy to, but at this point, traditionally, the council has appointed myself as the voting delegate.
Does any member of the council wish to represent the city at the annual meeting? Or if not, make a motion to approve Mr. Anderson?
I'll make a motion that the city manager be appointed the City of Norway's voting delegate in the upcoming MML annual meeting.
Support.
Motion made by Chris, supported by Mark. Roll call.
Mr. Babalani?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Okay, under communications this evening, we have 4 items. The first one is the approval of the wastewater treatment plant efficiency project. Mr. Anderson.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is another project or program that we've had in various phases of discussions with the council. This project or program was brought forward earlier in the summer where we had an opportunity through WPPI and through the state energy fund for grant monies to work on some efficiency projects at our wastewater treatment plant. One of the requirements that I had when we started moving forward with the study and then ultimately the project is that the work that we do on this particular project would be taken right out of some of the plans that we had for the larger project that we've been trying to work on for the last number of years out at the plant. So it's actually the same work scope, a smaller portion of the overall work scope that we needed to handle at the plant. We laid out in the report from WPPI, from Mr. Pickard, what we are going to receive. We are going to have a project that is $150,000 estimate. The cost is going to be $74,000, and the rest of that is grant money. The $74,000 is going to be paid for through a 0% loan from WPPI, a 10-year loan. And one of the things to note is that the anticipated energy savings is $26,000 per year. So it's actually going to see a net savings of $19,000 per year on the project. So the estimated payback is 2.8 years. We are going to, have to bid the project out under just like a typical project. So what we have is a budgeted project amount. The approval for tonight is to move forward with Meet and Hunt to perform the engineering services for a price not to exceed $15,100, and that's most of it.
I noticed in our executive memo for this evening's meeting, there was, the state had some concerns about our wastewater treatment plant. Will this project address any of those?
It does. What we had to do is, we went back to the Department of Environmental Quality, and through our rural development projects proposal or application, rural development requires a letter from the state agencies, whether water or sewer. And if we have any deficiencies or issues, they'd like to see those documented. That does help us in lowering our interest rate with RD or possibly grant allocations. So the DEQ has been very patient with the city because they've known for a number of years that we've had these projects we're trying to push forward. We don't have a grit removal system. That was a big one. The backup power situation at the plant. There's a number of things that the plant runs very well for the age of the plant, and they recognize that these particular projects, the ones that we've targeted, are straightforward in helping with the performance and efficiency of the plant. And so that letter was really geared towards our rural development side. But this particular project is a portion of what's identified out there.
Any other questions? Comments? Otherwise, looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve moving forward with the energy efficiency project and contract with Mead and Hunt to perform engineering services for a price not to exceed $15,100.
Second.
Motion made by Lee, supported by Chris. Roll call?
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Menigini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Mr. Babalani?
Yes.
Okay, next is approval for the Water Department of the fiber splicing project. Mr. Anderson.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, this is another project where we're looking to push this forward. We've received another 30% increase on our telemetry line from AT&T for the cost of that telemetry line. We've talked about this on numerous occasions about getting off of the AT&T line and putting that onto our fiber system. We need to move forward with this splicing project and then ultimately working with a SCADA program. We're getting quotes on the SCADA program right now, and we show you an estimate that's currently estimated at $55,000. But the splicing project is $1,695.55. Right now, we're getting charged, Mary, help me out, $600 a month?
No, it's almost
Se-
800.
Almost
700
800 now, yeah. Okay, so that, it wasn't too long ago that was below $400, you know, so we've seen that ratchet up quite a bit. So the payback on this is pretty short as well. Joe, I don't know if you have anything to add to that. You've been working closely with trying to get pricing for splicing and also for the SCADA.
Yeah, I've got the SCADA pretty well under control and getting some more costs brought in, so we can, as soon as the splicing is done, we can try to move forward with the budgeted project within this fiscal year to get off that AT&T line. As far as the splicing goes, I know that we like to have 3 bids. Finding someone to splice fiber is a little on the difficult side in this area. And talking with Jim Briner, he preferred fusion splicing rather than a mechanical splice. A lot of guys will put mechanicals in, and he recommended fusion. I received a quote from CCI to do this, and CCI did all the splicing and installation of the original project, so I felt that I could move forward with this and see the wishes of the council on this for $1,600, $1,595.
And this is just for the tank? This isn't the well site?
That's just the well site portion of it to get that piece of fiber lit up. So then we can now do the automation and get it in play to get rid of that circuit from AT&T.
Well, I'll be glad to see that we can finally get this done, because I've been harping about AT&T for almost 3 years now. As far as I'm concerned, we've been moving too slow, but hopefully we'll get it done and get away from them.
Okay, any other questions or comments? If not, I'm looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion that CCI be approved to move forward with the fiber splicing project for a price not to exceed $1,695.55.
Support.
Motion made by Lee, supported by Mark. Roll call?
Mr. Menigini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Mr. Babalani?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes. Approval, Resolution 2012-26, DDA bond refinancing. Mr. Anderson.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This past year, with the economics the way they are, it made sense for us to contact our bond counsel or our financial advisor and have them review our current bond holdings to see if there was any advantages, financial advantages for doing any refinancing on our current debt. They did come back immediately with an option for refinancing our downtown development bonds. There's currently 2 bonds outstanding right now, 2001 and a 2005 limited tax general obligation bond. They would be refinanced into a single bond holding, and there's quite a bit of savings on doing it this way. And having it done at this time, the rates are extremely attractive. So we're looking for council to approve a bond refunding resolution to move forward, resolution 2012-26, move forward with refinancing of the bonds.
I make a motion, we approve resolution 2012-26 for the DDA bond refinancing.
Support.
Roll call.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Mr. Babalani?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Menigini?
Yes.
On this one, I'd just like to comment that I'm glad to see we were able to go to our local bank to get them refinanced and not going through the national banks. Okay, last thing on the agenda for this evening is approval, wastewater department update alarm system. Mr. Anderson.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. In our wastewater budget, wastewater superintendent, Mr. Trevesi, has allocated $1,300 for upgrades to his current alarm system. He sent through a request to move forward with that budget item, and that's what you see before you tonight. It's an interface update for the plant alarm. I did not get a thorough understanding myself. I apologize for that, but Joe, I know you've been in contact with him on a regular basis concerning this. If you want to give him a little more detail on what the alarm updates are going to be?
Yes, we were having some issues with the alarms at the lift stations coming back to the main control center and then going to the auto dialer for call-outs. There were some upgrades that came forward that were identified by the person that did the initial alarm system indication that certain things needed to be upgraded. We budgeted for it in this budget, and this is Max Controls. Like I said, they were the original people that did the installation of the alarming system. And I want to add that as we move forward through this automation project, and we're looking at automation in that department, the items that are identified here for changing out are items that are very common in an automation system and can be adapted to just about anything that is used, so I don't believe that we are just putting our money into one thing and never can use it again. This is all Modbus protocol. It's very common throughout the industry in this type of equipment, so it's not like we're, just isolating ourselves to Max Controls. So, I was asked to move this forward so the alarms can be repaired, and so I did.
Any questions, comments?
Joe, are we still paying AT&T for some lines with this alarm system? Or,
No, not anymore.
okay, that's all.
No, that's all gone. There were many lines that we paid AT&T for.
I thought we still had something with wastewater. that we were-
Not in waste.
Do they still have that dialer through AT&T, that line? They have one.
There is a phone, AT&T auto dialer line,
Okay,
and I kept an AT&T line at the Hydro for the auto dialer.
okay,
We were nervous about shifting that over to the VoIP,
sure.
so we left those on AT&T, but that is the only thing
Okay.
that's left on.
Those are standard POTS lines, though, aren't they?
Yeah, they're just your standard phone line. It's not a special circuit.
You don't have any faith in our line? Is that what you're saying?
The auto dialer does not work well with voice over IP protocols.
Okay, any other questions, comments? If not, I'm looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion that the ILON web interface plant alarm system upgrade be approved from Harrison Business Group for a price not to exceed $1,300.
Support.
Motion made by Chris, supported by Lee. Roll call.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Mr. Babalani?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Menigini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
That's the conclusion of our business this evening. Would anyone from the audience wish to come up and address the council on any topic? If If you do so, please come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, folks. My name is Grant Carlson, Forest Drive, Norway. Mr. Mayor and City Council members, I'm here. Normally, I would feel more comfortable making personal phone calls every day. I don't like to necessarily speak to everybody in public about some of these issues, but I didn't have a chance. I don't have the time to get around to it. But regarding and coming to you both as concerned about fiscal responsibility and as a private property owner, Mr. Anderson, I had a chance to chat about some of this stuff, and we just haven't had time to get back into more of it. But there's a walking trail that's been approved apparently coming off of US 8 down the side of the property owned by the city towards the wastewater treatment plant. And it heads down the road and ends at the wastewater treatment plant for some reason. I own property down further. There's a two-route road that runs along. It's a water line easement and a electrical easement that my father, the previous owner of the property, I bought my father's home, gave to the city to have maintenance done along that line. But people continuously run up and down that road using four-wheelers, vehicles. I've met a number of people coming up and down the road from by the sewage treatment plant, dumping rubbish and coming down towards my property. It is private property. I own the property on both sides of the road, and the concern I have, both, I suppose, first of all, as a taxpayer, not necessarily the city of Norway, but I feel aligned with the city of Norway, of course, is that there's a walking trail that's being paid for that essentially goes to nowhere. I understand the concept between our wonderful city of the City of Trails, and I think, frankly, Ray's done a phenomenal job developing that with the City Council's assistance, and I think, frankly, it's a beacon in our area that we have so many great things with this trail system. But this trail, I look and I don't quite understand the purpose behind it. It starts at US 8 by Danielson's and runs along, and it appears that it came to my attention because it looked as though it was starting to get constructed the other day, and it simply ends at the wastewater treatment plant, which I don't think is necessarily a good place for a walking trail in the city of Norway anyway, because it runs us by the wastewater treatment plant. But ultimately, it also funnels people down that road, and the only logical thought that they're going to continue going down that road, which is private property, and across my property, and I have buildings down there. I have property that has been used. A lot of people use it as if it's not private property. And what I'm concerned about is that having this walking trail funneling down to this property is going to open a can of worms up, and it's simply just going to create more problems, more issues. There's already a gate there. It already says no motorized vehicles. It's disregarded, and frankly, I do look past a lot of that because mostly it's kids on motorbikes and people not causing any harm. And a lot of people walk up and down there from my neighbors, and frankly, that's not really a big issue either. But as crime continues to increase, I'm seeing more and more kids, younger people, individuals that you see them, you wonder, you ask them, what are you doing here? And they don't have an answer. I have a garage down there. It's a prime opportunity for vandalism. I want less people there, not more people. And as much as I would like to work with the city and work towards improving the area, because frankly, that's why I moved back here. I've been back here for a number of years, and that's my hope. But at some point, I don't understand what the purpose of coming through and funneling people past private property is, and that's what it appears to be. And that's my concern. That's why I wanted to present it to you folks. I would have preferred to make an individual call to everybody but it's much more efficient doing it this way. When the easement was given back in, I believe it was 97, there was a letter of understanding and agreements prior to the easement being given that was signed by Mayor Pollard that had a number of different specific items and agreements between the city and my father at the time. One of which was placing a gate, an additional gate at the City of Norway's cost at the other end of the property, so that there were then gates on both ends of the property. That hasn't been done, and frankly, I don't know that that's really something I'm looking for, but at some point, I guess I would see if this walking trail gets completed, and all of a sudden there's maps now published with this trail, which ends with the obvious result to walk down that property, which again is private. I see the incidences of trespassing increasing. I see problems with that. Mr. Anderson's been great chatting with me about some different ideas and some different options. that may alleviate some of those concerns. But I feel like we got the cart put before the horse a little bit. We've got this road being, or this path being put in, I'm assuming at some expense, and it drops off and leaves at the sewer treatment plant, with the next point of travel past my property and into my property and through my property. I guess, folks, I wanted to be brought up. I wanted to chat with you. Ray, Ray was nice enough to chat with me a little earlier today, and I had some other things going on, so it was a quick conversation. And Ray's been great to deal with, but I don't feel comfortable. I think it's going to open a can of worms up. I guess is what it's ultimately come down to. And I would probably put up more trespassing signs, asking officers to investigate them more often. And frankly, I don't want to get into that. I don't want anybody to have to deal with that. But I think it promotes it almost by having a trail going that way, and the only place to go is through private property. So I'm trying to cut off something before it gets to that point. I don't know if it's maybe too late. I'm not sure. But I didn't know that it was going to proceed until I saw the path being dug out from the Bobcat, and it appeared as though the path was being constructed. So that's what led me to come down here tonight. Otherwise, I probably would have just watched it on TV like I normally do. Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Where's the actual trail, where was that actual trail gonna go?
Well, we're just gonna go from the plant over to US 8, and part of it is a safety because we do see a lot of traffic, people walking down the road, and with the amount of traffic going in and out with the compost site, that felt like that was a good way of getting people off of that road, you know.
Wasn't that grant here
Yeah,
a month or
there was a
so
grant.
ago, when some woman picked up the grant?
It is, and you know, that was paid for through the Healthy Choices grant through the health department.
How far along are we on that project?
Joe?
We're about half, Mark. We've dug about half of it out. Started to install some of the crushed white granite that was delivered for the project.
I guess I didn't go down there, so I don't really know, but I mean, if it deadheads in private property, I don't know if there's any, without looking at it, I don't know if there's any other way we can change something there, or is it too late, or is there a better way to go? I've never been down there yet, so I don't know.
I mean, like I said, our plan was just to go from the plant down to the US 8, and again, try and get the people off the road, because there's quite a few walkers that go through.
But Ray, they come down US 8 and go on that path, don't, or they cut through private property to get on that far end,
Yeah,
on Grant's End?
Quite frankly, I'm not sure exactly where they all come from, if they're heading the other direction, because there's quite a few paths that come down the hill as well, off of Mine Street, off of Iron Street, so depending on where they're actually coming to get to that point, to get out, I think they cut through a lot of times to get to the US 8 to go to the Marion Park or get on our regular trail.
Well, we signed an agreement back in, would you say 97, Grant? Yes, sir. Put that other gate up, that's the least we can do for now, is get that other gate up.
Sure. But we have a no motorized vehicle sign up, and they go around the gate, so, outside of additional enforcement.
But I mean, do we really want people walking around by the filtration plant anyway, because it's gonna open up for vandalism with the equipment that's left down there and things
They're
like that?
down there now, and we just wanted to get them off the road. That was the main idea. Let's get them off the road. They're down there now. I mean, they're walking along. Like I said, I think wherever they're coming from, it looks like their main focus is to get out to US 8 and to the trail system. So basically, you say it doesn't go to anywhere, but really what it is, it's collecting them from wherever they come from and getting them out to US 8 in a safe manner.
But we don't have a gate there right now, correct, Grant?
We have one on the opposite side.
But not on...
Not on our side. Yeah. We have one on the opposite side, but if they come down, if they're heading from US 8 down the Plant Road, and you hit the two track, you're not gonna see the gate until you get all the way across Grant's property. And he's true on that. I mean, you don't see it. If you come from the other direction, you see it right away.
Would the gate satisfy what you're looking for? Being it was promised to your father, would that satisfy what you're?
I guess, if I may.
Sure.
Frankly, I prefer to actually chat with Ray about it. I don't know if that's the route I want to go. I mean, I use it. with my four-wheeler back and forth and travel a little bit as well. And most of the concern I have, actually, it's not almost from, there's the gate on the one end, and there's not a gate on the other end towards the sewage treatment plant. The concern is most of the folks that cause me concern that I've seen are coming from that end. The folks that are coming from the other end, closer to the Forest Drive entryway, a lot of them are my neighbors. They walk. They've been doing that for years. I really don't have any issue with anybody walking through there. It is a little two-rut road. It's not a big deal to me. Sometimes I see some kids on motorbikes coming through, and most of the time they're respectful. They slow down. They don't come flying through. But it's like Ray said, with some of the individuals from the general public that doesn't necessarily have ties. If you're coming from the other end, it's generally local people, local ties that I usually know half of them. From the other end, it's from the compost site that I don't know, and that are other ones I find that are coming down there. The other night at midnight, I'm laying in bed with the windows open, and I can hear a bunch of hooligans, for better way of describing them, raising holy heck down that way. And I think it was also coinciding with some issues that Norway PD had that night.
But we do think that they come off of Iron Street and Mine Street. I mean, not down by the plant, so to speak.
Yeah, and
So
that's where
that's something we're looking into.
yeah, I'm not sure if that's what I'm looking for. Frankly, I saw it being constructed. I thought it might be too late to put it back into the container at this point. And Ray's been great with trying to communicate with some of these things to me. But I don't want anything more that is going to promote the use of that road that already is there because of these reasons. It is private property, and I can deal with a little bit of usage.
How would
but
the gate be if, when they put the gate up, they allowed a certain width, like maybe 3 feet where somebody could get in to walk through? Is that, being like Lee said, Mr. Pollard had, when he was on the council here, had talked about the gate. I mean, would that be satisfied, or you just want it gone totally?
I guess I'd like to get back to the council with that. Part of me, and as I mentioned to Ray, because I like the plan that the city of Norway's come up with, this city of trails, and promoting that aspect of it. At the same time, I have to think about the kids. I've got my 2 kids, and people coming through and causing problems, but walking is one less. Obviously, if they're not on motorized vehicles, that makes it less likely that they're going to hurt somebody per se. I'm just trying to keep less traffic through the private property. But that might be an option. But I guess I'd discuss it with Ray, and I'd be somewhat non-committal at this point.
Is it okay if we just say for now that you work with Ray on this issue?
That's fair.
I mean,
Yep.
I don't know if we can necessarily stop the trail from going in at this point, but if you and Ray keep in communication, and as the project's going on and as issues arise, we can do our best to kind of address those issues for you.
And maybe we can work with you with more signage, just for us to get signs up to make sure people know where they can and can't be.
Well, and that was something, I guess as I just learned about it this weekend, I think it was Saturday when I saw the road being constructed. First thing I thought was, okay, I thought of berms, I thought of gates, I thought of signs. I've had a lot of things going on. I didn't really start thinking about all the different options to discuss with Ray, frankly. And that's why I said I don't know, folks, if it's way past the time it might be too late at this point to, like you said, stop anything at this point. But I still question why there's I know Ray's suggesting it's funneling out, but there's very little traffic coming off of Forest Drive because there is a gate there already, and they have to walk around that gate. I think there's a little bit of foot traffic and a little bit of kids on motorbikes. But I think we're opening up a bigger can of worms by funneling people off of US 8, a major thoroughfare. I'm assuming there'll be maps printed with that trail on there, promoting it. That creates issues, and I don't want those issues. I just want to have my little piece of heaven and not have more people coming through the property than I want. So.
Well, it's only like the gate should be put up if that's what was promised, and that would cut down people cutting from the wastewater treatment plant through your property, and maybe promoting the trail heading down to one of the other streets, that dead end on the city limits there. I don't know if we own the property all the way through there, or is that still owned by the Bill Nelson estate? Do we own
I'd
all
have
the
to
way
look at
up to the street? Is
Up
that property?
to, you're talking about up to Section Street?
Well, either Section Street or one of the other streets that dead end.
Well, we have some concerns that came in, coming up the hill that way too. And it's a steep hillside, and we said, you know, we've looked at it a couple different times, and we've always discounted that as a reasonable area to get up on. If you come back farther onto the old Bill Nelson property, you could come up through that area. Like I said, that's why I think a lot of the traffic is coming down through and then coming out. But of course, we don't own that, so.
Yeah, Ray, I was gonna say, who polices that area, really? 'Cause
Well, it's in the
that's-
township,
that-
so
that's-
it's
you
the
can't even,
township.
the state,
It's the
or the
sheriff.
Norway PD don't even take a ride through there. That's not their jurisdiction.
Right, I think I'm the first, right over there is the city, right here is the town.
Right.
I'm on the border.
Right, the plant isn't actually in the township, so that, the actual jurisdiction of that road is county sheriff.
Right, who's not gonna
Right.
come down there?
It's just same as the issues we're trying to deal with now, just outside the city limits, so. So that's a communication we have to have with them too.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time, folks.
Thanks.
Good, thank you. Does anybody else from the public wish to come up and address the council?
Good evening. I'm Jean Bradford in 2465 Travis Farm Road, and I'd just like an update on American Transmission, the high-energy wires. There was supposed to be a map here at the City Hall. I don't see any map. I think last meeting I was at, Joe, you had a map.
Yeah, I did have a map, and
It's been available in the
it's
office.
available at the office here. We have them, you just have to ask for one.
Oh, they're behind the desk?
Yep, in color, nice map, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
When we had talked to ATC, they hadn't gotten us any kind of big map that we could put up. We just have the small map that Joe had got. Okay,
Okay, all right, then I'll get one.
Okay.
Thank you.
thank you.
I can get you one.
We'll give it to you tonight. We'll just grab one for you.
Anybody else wish to address the council? Okay, Lee.
Oh, the only comment I have is, 2 weeks ago, I did hear the siren, but it was right outside the city hall here, could barely hear it. I don't know if anybody else heard it, the warning siren.
I heard it. But I was up at the ski hill, so.
Oh, okay, and I was talking to some people out Forest Drive area, they said they didn't hear nothing, so. I don't know how well it's gonna work. I mean, we have it and it's working, but how loud it's gonna be and how many different areas are gonna be able to hear it.
I've talked with Chuck in the fire department, and they recognize that it's not
Yeah.
that, but it's quite an expense for them to undertake to try to either get something louder or,
Oh, yeah.
or if you really follow the guidelines for sirens, the city would need approximately 3 to cover all of the populated areas of the city, and you're talking a pretty big expense. And the fire department would rather invest their money into equipment, into trainings, than expend it on sirens. But they will do whatever the council tells them they should be doing.
Well, that was my question, has this ever been evaluated? I think it all started because somebody wanted it done, and was it ever evaluated by the fire department, by other preparedness agencies? What should we do? It seems like we went headlong into this without any proper evaluation.
In some of the discussions I've had, the county is looking at a system that would actually suit us better, and it'll be available through all the areas, where it uses a dialer, like an auto dialer. If there's a storm in your area, you can set up with them a phone number, and it will basically call and tell you there's a major storm. They don't have that in place yet. It's something they're working on right now. And then we have the system we have set up with the TV, where it gives you the weather warnings when a news organization broadcasts the warning. The siren, the fire department understood, like I said, it's not gonna warn everybody, but like you had said, Doc, there was a drive to have it after we had that small tornado go through, over by Third Ward. There was a push then, well, we don't have a tornado siren. Well, it got pushed and it's up.
And I did hear it one day, I'm not sure why it was going off, it was a test.
They test it the first Wednesday of every month at 7 p.m. But like I said, I know for warnings, I really, from the discussions I've had even with people in the county, that their system is gonna be the best way once it's in place, once it's set up. And I don't think, unless council wants us to, I don't know that we should be looking to invest in any kind of system at this point, especially with theirs going in.
Yeah, well, I wasn't looking to
I know,
do
I'm just-
anything. I was looking to, we should evaluate before we spend any more money, was my.
I agree with you on that. I think I think they knew from the beginning this wasn't gonna be the fix-all, but there was a push to have it in, so they did what was necessary to get it in. Any other?
My concern tonight was the ATC as well, you know, about the maps and when is their, when are they gonna have their next October meeting? Has that ever been set? It was my understanding it was delayed and I didn't receive any other letters as a landowner, so I wondered if anyone else has heard anything. And I feel that we need to keep on top of this.
The last I heard also was middle of October, but I didn't have any kind of dates yet either. Just-
We had a conversation with Brett French, kind of a follow-up from the council meeting and from an article in the paper. And he came down and we had a lengthy discussion. They did put a hold on the UP project for 2 years. I think, isn't it 2 years, Jeremy?
Yes.
Yeah. And they're going to move forward with the Wisconsin project and the Escanaba project, or one going through Bark River. But they're not going to move forward with the Dickinson County and Marquette County project at this time. But they still are going to have their October meeting, and again, we didn't get a date on that. As soon as we have a date, of course, we'll put that out there.
Well, but also too, though, we have to stay on it because Norway is the top end of the Wisconsin project. So even though the Michigan one is on hold, part of the consideration with Norway was that's how they were going to come in from Wisconsin, was through Norway. So the city, we still need to stay on top of it just so we can stay informed as to what's going on.
And do you know if ATC is gonna inform potential landowners that might be impacted by this, or are they, it seems like they're trying to be fairly secretive. They say that it's an open process, but they do everything they can just to look like they're doing something without really notifying people what actually is going on. It's all smoke and mirrors.
Right. I mean, according to them, they're supposed to be sending information out to individual property owners. There was a problem, and they admitted that problem with the sections coming through Norway, so our residents were correct. They said they didn't get anything. That was correct. Apparently, they've added some additional notices to the Norway residents. Again, just based on my last meeting with him, he assured us that they were going to be very upfront, or at least very aggressive at trying to get notices out to the Norway residents. Just to be clear too on what Jeremy said, the northern part of the Wisconsin project, and he says it comes through Norway, it's not the sections that are up in the north part of town. It actually comes through the south side across the river, and if anything, it would impact along the road here, but not the section that's up north. So we went through in detail again on, those lines coming in. Majority of them were in the township, again, outside of our jurisdiction, but again, they're trying to figure out how to get over into Plains, and so the south side here, they've got a couple of runs that they were looking at. Of course, we did what we could to, again, express our concerns and try and give them as much detail as possible as to why that wasn't a good route. So, again, as soon as we find out when that meeting is in October, try and get that out.
And Joe, I was wondering if you've done anything, or is there any other thoughts on our electrical master plan and the loop system up north of town? Are we gonna try to get on both ends of town where our residents are on We Energy's electrical system? Was there any effort to get them into our own system?
At this point, I had a conversation with Ray about it this morning, and it was a brief conversation. It was looking at the master plan and seeing where the deficiencies are in the system that's out here currently, and trying to address those before we take on another effort to have to purchase We Energy's lines from them and take these people in. We've recognized this for quite a few years. It's been on my radar. And quite frankly, with the deficiencies north and south and to the east of town, I felt that getting our own people that we currently serve up to the right voltage and good quality, reliable electricity was more important than trying to take on more customers.
My whole point in this was
Yeah.
not to get these people necessarily on our
Yeah.
system, but if we're gonna complete that loop down Boundary Line Road, that makes much more sense to me.
Yes.
And a part of that is getting additional customers in
Yeah,
our line.
I've looked at that.
So it makes sense to upgrade our system and get these people all at the same time. And that's the only reason I'm pushing forward on it.
Sure.
Pushing on it is because if we're gonna complete the loop, we ought to do it the right way and not do it one way and then years later get more people on our system and do it the right way.
Yes, I agree with you, Doc. I looked at the route I would take out of the substation by the Department of Natural Resources. We would head west out US 2. We would go underneath, we'd have underground underneath the railroad tracks and then come up and then go along that undeveloped property that Corollo owns there and get electricity in there and then go down to Upper Pine Creek and turn and take in all that. And then come back around Boundary Line and back around to Perney and make a big circle loop out of that. But that is really in the far distant future. That's not something that isn't within like the first 5 years of this. But that would be ultimately what we would want to do, yes.
Okay, so that
I've
should
already,
be in the master plan.
I've already looked at it, and yeah, I can get it in the master plan. I will put it in the master plan.
Okay, well, that was my concern, that
Yeah,
we need to plan ahead of time, even if it's 5 or 10 years down the line.
yeah.
And it's best to get the plan right.
Yep, I will add a few pages to it in the back, and I'll have it inserted to everything I handed out. And
Okay.
I'll put it in there.
That's my concern today.
Lee, did you have anything else?
No.
Mark?
I have a couple. I'm still interested in that compost site. I read Ray's report that he had in the memo, executive. And I do think we should look at that site over behind the golf course. I know it's gonna cost the city a little bit of manpower to put the road in, and I understand we have the fence already here. Otherwise, we're gonna be wasting our time with moving the compost to a different site like we did this year. So what's the difference with putting the road in and having the compost where it should be? We're spending money there either way. I'd like to see that stepping forward. If the township doesn't want to pay, then they shouldn't be using the site. I would like to say hats off to Jamin Schaefer and Boy Scouts Troop Number 532 for all the work they did down at Hanbury. They repaired 15 tables and the 32 damaged posts by the parking and stained everything. I think they did a heck of a job. Joe, I got a problem with the fairgrounds thing. I believe the bill was 18,000, if my memory's right. And we underestimated the manpower by $9,000. I know you said there was a machine breakdown where they had to change a hose and a couple other issues there, but I don't feel that the city taxpayers should be putting forth $9,000 of their money to work on that line.
Mark,
I understand what you wrote.
Okay, and I wrote that out. There were some things that, there were some inefficiencies that we dealt with that, you know, we had reviewed that internally here, and then we reviewed it with the Electric Utility Board. And, you know, it was the Electric Utility Board's opinion based on those review, or that review, that, you know, outside of our estimating, that we should hold that at this point. Now, again, they also recommended that, you know, if that policy is to change, that the council should move that forward, that we're gonna do time and material, because in the past, we hadn't, you know, we hadn't handled these under time and material. We given an estimate, and we basically, if we had some inefficiencies on our end, outside of, you know, some true change orders, you know, like you'd be aware of, we usually held our price. And so that was the internal discussions, that was a discussion of the electric utility board, and so before, I mean, obviously we would bill the fair board if that was the council's wishes. But then we also have to know that that's going to be policy moving forward, so that any customer that is getting a quote from us would have to know that, hey, here's our best estimate, and it's going to be a time and material job. And so if we do have overruns, we're gonna be, you know, billing those as such. So.
Yeah, I understand, but I mean, that's a lot to bite off. I know there was problems there, and I don't think we can go after the fair board for the difference, but I would like to see something done so it doesn't happen again, because $9,000 is $9,000.
Well, maybe we're gonna, excuse me, Mark, maybe we're gonna have to sharpen our pencil a little more on future bids, but just to keep the record straight, it's no taxpayer dollars involved in that, that's all the electric department money.
It is all electric department money, Lee, but it is manpower that the taxpayers are paying, or the utility fund, as far as electric department is covering that money of the manpower. And I think that estimates need to be a little bit more accurate than that. On the safe route to the school, I do still think that I read Ray's report, and I still do think that I know that the school can't put that money off. I totally understand that, because it's not on school property, but I still don't think that the city should be responsible, and I understand the position on the bracket fund. So I just want to make sure that the city doesn't bite that $30,000 engineering. That's all I got.
Chris?
How's our power generation going down at the hydro?
Unit number 4 is online and producing power. Friday evening, I got a call from the hydro operator. We were having they were cutting the river back from Niagara. We could no longer run unit number 1 because there wasn't enough water to run it. He wanted to put unit number 4 online. He was having a few issues with it, so I went down there to help him out. We did turn 1 off that evening, and we could not get number 4 started. There were some wiring issues within it that I had to fix. But it is now just online and producing power. When I told everybody it was offline, indeed it was when I told you that. About a day and a half after that, they upped the river just a little bit, and we were able to limp along with number 1 set very low. We haven't had to shut it off since the last conversation that I had with council. So now that I've got unit 4 up and running, I believe that even with the low water flows, we'll be able to at least produce a megawatt of power out of the hydro, which is what we had figured we could do.
You mentioned you were going to attend a meeting with We Energies on control of the water levels and their plan going into winter.
That hasn't come about yet,
Okay.
that meeting. That's typically later on in the fall. Reports I get from Joe Kick at We Energies.
Just be interesting to hear how they plan on handling winter here.
Okay.
We're gonna be in the same
When I
situation.
find something out, I
Like
can,
mad for the next month, so it won't have to worry about it.
We can hope.
yeah.
That's all I have.
Oh, and I have no comments this evening. Joe, is there anything you'd like to?
No, the hydro was the only thing I really had to comment on, and I've told everybody about that, so I'm good.
The roof project, that's all
That's
done?
completed, yep.
Mary?
No.
Tricia? Jay? Ray?
I have nothing at this time.
Okay. We will not be going into closed session this evening, so I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Motion made by Mark, supported by Chris. Roll call.
Mr. Babalani?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Signed.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.